eventually move in together into Elizabeth's rental house. And by October, I'm just going to start that again.
Sorry.
It's okay.
My titty itch.
These pick up everything. I can hear you scratching. Stop. That summer, Elizabeth and Jens went on vacation together. They went to Europe. They moved into Elizabeth's rental house. And by October of 1985, the case is cold, right? But investigators began asking Jens to submit blood samples and footprints, fingerprints. He balks at this suggestion, and he says that he needs to speak with his German embassy first.
Yeah, he really lays a line of bullshit down right here.
Really tries to pull the card of, like, my daddy's a German diplomat.
Yeah, and you know...
I have diplomatic immunity.
I don't know what type of diplomat his father was, but not, that gets loosely used sometimes. Not every diplomat's like high level, super
No, it doesn't
fucking
seem
important.
like his dad was some high ranking official within the German embassy.
He's serving some capacity, but it's not like he's the fucking chancellor's right hand or some shit. You know what I mean?
Howard planned to meet Elizabeth, and remember, Howard is Derek Haysom's older son, the Houston surgeon. He plans to meet Elizabeth and Jens for lunch. He's hoping to record a conversation and maybe catch them as they, fuck up, mention something they're not supposed to.
Yeah, or change their story or whatever.
Well, when he shows up in Charlottesville, he discovers that Jens has emptied out his bank account, cleaned out the house, his car, and he's already disappeared overseas.
Oh, so Jens took off. After giving that bullshit line about my father's a diplomat, if it gets back that I'm part of an investigation to the German government, it might be a big deal. I'll let you know what my decision is. And now he's gone.
He goes on, he takes the money and runs.
Okay.
It's like a Steve Miller song.
Oh,
Steve Miller Band.
Son of a bitch.
Now, a few days later, Elizabeth joined him. They had set up different itineraries, but had plans to eventually meet up. And
Ooh.
they meet up in Paris.
That's real cloak and
romantic.
Real cloak and dagger. We're going to have separate itineraries, but we're really going to have the same one.
They meet up in Paris under the Arc de Triomphe.
See, that's what the fuck I'm talking about right there. They think they're some tortured star-crossed lovers. They really do. I think they do.
She dyed her hair red. The pair bums around Europe together. The plan was to finally end up in Thailand. They were going to get a copy of Yen's birth certificate there, get married, and apply for Thai passports. The pair rented a car while they were in Paris. They drive through Europe and eventually get turned away at the Bulgarian border.
Oh, okay.
From there, they fly to Bangkok, then Singapore, and eventually they fly back to Moscow. While they're in Moscow, they manage to create some fake IDs, calling themselves Tim and Julia Holt.
Yeah, but they've done a lot of damn air travel and stuff. I mean, you think Interpol's after them? Or not really? Not
at this point, but eventually they do get arrested, and this is April 30th, 1986. So this is more than a year after her parents have been murdered. And they get busted for writing a fake cashier check.
Yeah, because the money's running out. I'm guessing all the other systems that were kind of automatic for a little while, maybe, paying the bills are starting to dry up. The state's, going through its whatever through the machine. And yeah, so now they don't have any fucking money and they're passing bad checks.
Yeah, they had created a fake bank account under the Tim and Julia Holt name. And it was some bank where they were going to be able to write these cashier checks for pretty large sums of money. And eventually they do get busted for writing a $5,000 fake cashier check. And they were also caught using fraudulent documentation and IDs that they had created and lying to police in London. When their flat is raided, they find, and when I say they, I mean the investigators, find bags of clothes from department stores, Love letters were discovered. So one of the theories is that they were buying like really expensive clothes and then like taking them back and getting their money back for them.
Oh, okay. So they're cashing out. They're still got active credit cards, right? They're buying expensive items, taking them back, getting the cash. So they got petty cash on them.
Right. Find all these love letters. And some of the letters outlined a clear motive for murdering the Haysoms. Their love could not be free as long as Nancy and Derek were in the picture. Elizabeth's hatred for her parents was evident in these letters.
So, yeah, it's well beyond some surly teen. She literally hates her parents, wants them gone, wants what they have, the money and the estate, but she doesn't have feelings for her parents.
Investigators in England, of course, get up with authorities in America. And investigators from Virginia make the trip over to London. Jens is grilled by these American investigators, and he finally confesses what he's done. He admits to setting up this alibi in D.C., renting the car, and driving to their home where he murders the Haysoms. And he's charged with murder. Now, Elizabeth is charged with accessory to murder. Jens tried to fight extradition to America from England. Authorities agree to take the death penalty off the table in Virginia so that the English authorities are willing to send him back to the U.S.
Because they don't have death penalty in England? Is that right?
Yeah, they just were like, no, we're not going to send him back if you're going to kill him.
Right.
Right. Now, once he's back in the U.S., he recants his confession. However, the footprint that was left behind at the crime scene is linked to Jens. Jens claims that Elizabeth is the one who carved up her parents. Elizabeth confessed verbatim to what Jens had originally confessed, so she's denying that she's the killer.
But she's saying she knew of the plan.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, while they're in custody, they both undergo psychological evaluations. Elizabeth is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Oh, wow. Imagine that.
Jens was given a diagnosis of shared delusional disorder.
Sounds like Jens got used to me.
Elizabeth, while in custody, breaks up with Jens, explaining that she's going to go ahead and plead guilty.
So this is like, oh my gosh. She is orchestrated this, in my opinion. Right? Do you share that opinion?
Yes.
Yes, and this is so cliche. This happens every fucking time in these exact situations. You have a strong personality, she's like the planet, or she's the sun, and
she's conniving. She
controlling,
manipulates him.
I
have to tell you, I worked as a bartender once, and I had this very entertaining customer that would come in, and he loved to watch daytime soap operas, and he would describe Erica Kane as candevious. And I was like, you mean she's like conniving and devious? And he'd go, nope, she's candevious. Like he didn't understand there were two different like words. He just like made his own word. Okay. So I would say that Elizabeth is candevious.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she totally set him up. But this was never going to fucking work. As smart as they thought they were. This never works.
Elizabeth takes a plea deal and gets 90 years in prison. Now, she admits she egged Jens on. Jens stands trial in 1990. He pleads not guilty, and he does not carry himself well during the trial at all.
No, because he probably thinks he's smarter than everybody in the room.
He does. He's snarky. He laughs. He treats the prosecutor as though he's stupid.
Dude,
he's very condescending, very patronizing to this prosecutor. He's arrogant. I mean, at one point, I saw some footage where the prosecutor is like, why are you laughing?
Yeah.
And Jens is like, because you're making this really funny for me.
Oh, okay.
It's a really funny narrative that you've come up with.
Ho, ho, ho.
It's very so he just doesn't look good at all.
No, and what I heard of his contacts with police before they went on the run, he was just basically like, I'm doing you a favor by, I'm talking to you, I'm going to explain things to you like they're little kids, and then you won't have to bother me again.
Oh, yeah. He totally views these cops in Lynchburg and Boonesboro as like these backwoods, southern, ignorant, like they're just stupid, and he knows so much more than they do.
Yeah, and these seasoned investigators, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, when they walk in the room and someone is sitting there acting like this guy, they love it. Because you'll walk right into their fucking mind games and traps because you think
This is
you're
what they're
smarter.
trained to do.
Oh, shit. That's a detective school.
Jens is found guilty and given 2 life sentences. Now, Jens has claimed innocence over the years. He's recanted his confession, saying that he doesn't know who killed the Haysoms. He came up with theories that Elizabeth had killed her parents, or that her drug dealer and maybe some other unknown male were responsible for these murders. He became eligible for parole in 2003 and was denied repeatedly until 2019, when he was released and sent back to Germany.
Now, he has some notable people, speaking on his behalf, right?
Well, we'll get into that in a second, but he continues to blame Elizabeth for the whole thing. In 2009, DNA testing was used on some of the evidence involved. Now, this is a little tricky, and I'm no DNA expert, so I'm going to try to break this down and explain it as best as I can. Only 15% of the badly degraded crime scene material was available for testing.
Okay.
So, of all of the material, only 15% of it was usable.
Wow.
And none of the profiles were complete when it was tested.
Okay.
None of the partial profiles matched Jens Soering. However, some of the DNA samples that Jens' defense team tried to suggest were belonging to 2 other males at the crime scene, but I'm confused. Let me do this again.
No, it's fine. It's very interesting.
I misread something here.
It's okay.
Let me find that. Make it edit a little more easy for me. I keep track. In 2009, DNA was used to test some of the evidence involved. I'm no DNA expert, so I'm going to try to break this down as best as I can.
Yes, it's very interesting.
So only 15% of the badly degraded crime scene material was available for testing.
And I'm going to guess that's because it was days and days old, dried blood, all that shit.
It's been years and years.
Yeah, and it's been even longer. Yeah. Okay.
So when they do the testing, none of the profiles were complete. None of the partial profiles matched Jens. Some of the DNA samples seemed to point to experts that were, of course, hired by Jens' defense team. They seemed to suggest that 2 other males were at the crime scene. Now, it suggested that one of the males had Jens' blood type, but that it wasn't Jens. His defense team tried to use this to exonerate him from the murders. But under scrutiny, the DNA claim doesn't entirely hold up. Other experts looked at the samples and said they were so degraded it made testing difficult. There were differences between blood typing in 1985 versus DNA in 2009, obviously. Contamination had occurred over the years. Plus, when they had scraped the blood samples back then, it had been contaminated with skin cells and different things.
Oh, shit.
So it didn't make it completely accurate for testing.
Right.
And the actual DNA itself was degraded and contaminated. None of the partial DNA profiles cited by Jens' team came from unknown donors, but they were all consistent with Derek's DNA.
Okay.
So an expert concluded that the DNA that belonged to Derek Haysom was what had been tested. And so, yeah, it didn't belong to Jens, but it could have been part of the profile for Derek.
Right.
And that the idea of 2 other males belonging to this specific DNA is 1 in 68 billion.
Oh, so it's still partial profiles, degraded materials, very tricky, but it still proves that it's likely Derek's.
That the material that was allegedly being tested is Derek's.
Okay.
And yeah, they didn't find any of Jens' DNA there, but they only tested a small percentage of.
So basically, what
had.
they're saying is, you got this unknown. The defense is making it like this unknown profile, which is it's the victim's profile
because it's a partial profile,
and it's a partial,
and the partial fits along with Derek's DNA.
Right, it fits into his full profile, but in the likelihood of it being someone else is one of those crazy DNA,
But
numbers.
they have heavily tried to play on this DNA evidence. Oh, it's science and you can't refute science and it's fact. And he's innocent. And there have been a lot of people who've sided with him, including Tim Kaine.
Yeah.
The governor of Virginia at one point.
Yep.
Some detectives